to another episode of the Market Pulse presented by SmartTouch. I'm your host, Aaron Fischera, and today I have a wonderful guest with us, Ed Carey, the founder and CEO of Audiencetown. Ed, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Aaron, and happy Friday.
Well, happy Friday indeed. It's the best day, but I say the best day is the one that always ends in Y. Yeah. So, Ed, well, first of all, for our audience, Audiencetown, if, you weren't familiar, well, disclaimer, we've used it on a few ourselves, but it is like Google Analytics on steroids. Consumer insights, you go into depth about credit rates, their timing on when they're going to buy or their cycle, dogs, even pets, which drastically influences marketing material and brand. But before kind of going into that, insights, data, and how it applies in decision-making, tell us about yourself, Ed. How'd you get into this industry? How does someone grow up and say, I really want to dive into the data of new home sales?
Well, it's a fun question to answer. It started probably many years ago now. Audiencetown has been building and operating for 7 years. Prior to that, I worked in really high growth technology and data and media companies in New York that were using consumer data to understand profiles and behaviors of people and their shopping habits, and how that data and software were used by large marketers to just, drive sales. So many things were changing about the internet. So many things were changing about how people were consuming information online and purchasing things online. So I sort of saw that revolution happen. Then I thought, hey, there's got to be an industry that's not using all these sophisticated tools powered by consumer data. Maybe there's an industry I could build a platform for. Around that time, I was an adjunct professor at a school in New York, and I was teaching, and I had a lot of guest speakers come in from digital media and data and technology, and they all said the same thing to these graduate students, which was, the businesses that are vertical or the businesses that are niche within the startup ecosystem always thrive because they make something typically that B2B customers really want. They usually thrive because they really deeply understand the customer. So I thought, okay, hey, maybe there's an industry that's not doing all of these things that the big brands and the big industries are doing. So my wife became a real estate agent in suburban New Jersey. And there was an aha moment where she called me on the phone and said, they're talking about the stuff you do for a living, corporate. There's a big brokerage. Yeah. So they're talking about using data and technology for all of their digital marketing. It's like all the stuff you talk about when you come home. And that was it. I was like, it's real estate. Real estate. I didn't know much about it other than through my wife. And it turns out real estate is the biggest contributor to GDP, a massive industry, something that is essential and critical to all of our lives. Also, it's an industry that has a lot of data, whether it's MLS data or transaction data or listing data or municipal data that really wasn't being repurposed for marketing. So that's the background story. So I started doing my homework and I thought, wow, real estate is big. Everybody has a personal emotional tie to it. The digital marketing, from what I could tell through my interviews, was, not using these modern tools. So I thought, hey, that could be a vertical to really get into. So that's how it all started. And, my original thesis has proven correct. We haven't always been correct in what we've built or how we've sold it, but we've gotten there now. And here we are all these years later. And, I think real estate marketing has improved a great deal even since we started the company, hopefully somewhat because of Audiencetown, but also just through sort of evolution. And I think it's a really exciting time for real estate and home builder sales and marketing, given everything in the world even.
Oh, yeah. I think more so, I think post-COVID, I know it's now repetitive after, but less about, now it's more about differentiating yourself and being found and knowing your buyers, behaviors and consumer insights. And so, I guess, to that point, Audiencetown, I refer to it as a kind of a Google Analytics on steroids with some of the stuff that you guys talk about, what does it solve? Like, how does it help the home builder and developer? And what are some of those insights that you think they should be paying attention to help make decisions?
Yeah, I mean, the very basic premise is that when you understand your customers, you sell more homes. It's true for every industry and every product class. If you really understand who your customer is, why they buy, how they buy, how long it takes them to buy, when you really understand those things, you just sell more product. That's fundamental to marketing. And a platform like ours is oftentimes described as magical. It's oftentimes described as Google Analytics on steroids. So we describe it as a lot of people describe it to us, which we're very happy to take. We're very happy to be mentioned alongside Google. But it's really basically that. If you really know who your customer is, deeply, then you can just, you can craft marketing messages, you can build marketing or customer personas. You can understand why families are buying your homes, instead of empty nesters. You can understand why it takes 8 months for people to experience, your community. You can understand their income. You can understand the cars they drive, the lifestyle they're looking to lead. You can understand where they're moving from and where they're moving to or where they want to move from. So it just becomes very powerful. And when you understand all those things, you typically just sell more homes. And it kind of starts with that. So I think when we looked around at how marketing was being planned and activated, we saw that there was just that big missing piece of the customer or consumer data. It seemed like Google Analytics was the only little window that a lot of home builders had into like who their customer was,
and for marketers too. That's the standard.
That's right. Just hey, and basically Google Analytics is built for, is a free product, and it's built for e-commerce primarily, and it's built to service the monetization of Google mostly. So, it just doesn't really tell you who your customer is. It tells you traffic patterns, and so, using various infrastructure and data, we thought we could just build, sort of a better mousetrap or a better view into who the customer is. I think we've proven that to the industry. I think the industry is still, learning about us, but we're getting there. And once people see it in action, they say, "Wow, this is magic. How do you do this?"
I mean, to that point, is there a case study that kind of piqued your interest of recently, or kind of, if you can share that type of detail, one that you kind of say, "Hey, weren't expecting that," or create those aha moments?
Yeah. There's two that we often share, but are very typical. And I think it's fun to learn from, the kind of simple thing that like a marketer can really do. So it's like, what do you do once you have all of this customer data at your fingertips? What do you do when you actually see the profiles of all the people coming to your website? One simple one was, we had a top 30 home builder seeing a lot of traffic to this one very large community that was actually a little, sort of behind in their sales goals. And they looked at the audience down. Our platform sits on the website of the community, so you can see all the consumer traffic. And they said, "Hey, it's really funny, but 60% of the people coming to our community website have large dogs, one or even two. Isn't that interesting?" So the majority of their site traffic were dog owners. In fact, we even pinpointed down to the fact that his dogs weighed like 60 pounds, I think, which I guess is a fairly large dog. I don't have a dog, but I think that's a pretty big dog. So it was like kind of like large dog owners were at this community website.
Well, it depends on their height too, because
could just be overweight.
60 pounds can be a chunk,
So big dogs, not little toy. And it turns out this home builder had an option to build like dog showers in the entryway, which was not being promoted at all on the website, in the paid ads, in the search, or in any of the cloud. And it was an option for the house. You could actually have a dog shower built right into like the mudroom. And so they like changed all of the images on the website. They promoted through like pop-ups that dog showers were an optional add-on to the house. So that's like a simple example where you can just be like, my customers like dogs. put dog pictures in the market. Like sometimes it's just simple stuff. That community went on to eventually sell, fairly efficiently. And then another simple example is maybe a little bit more on the financial demographics. We had a very large builder that had one community and half the homes were about 600,000. The other half were like 1 million. The 600,000 sold out and the 1 million were just not selling at all. All the traffic that they were getting through all of their marketing channels were from people who basically could not afford the $1 million homes. You can see income, you can see credit score. And so they, changed all the marketing to update, all of their marketing collateral, all of their marketing messages and all of their email messages outbound and all of their listing items to, appeal to people who could afford it. So they had to over time shape their traffic to a higher income traffic profile, and then, sold the $1 million homes.
Actually, I'll give kudos to Tanner, because that example is the same one that we discovered as well. As it acted as a validation of knowing, hey, the message for this case community was, oh, we're hitting the right, credit scores, socioeconomic status, and who we want to hit, as well as marital. So it kind of acted as a validation of, not only of a pivoting, but reaffirming of the programming.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Sometimes we get the question like, well, there's FHA. What's interesting about FHA laws is that you're allowed to observe your customer myriad ways. You can observe through data and analytics, their income. You can observe their profiles. You can observe their sort of patterns and interests, without violating FHA and, targeting people.
I mean, you got to, balance that as well, the regulations and what is available. And then, it actually gets to the point of just, let's talk and shift gears around some larger trends, because, getting information and getting data is one way, because it's all about discovery, but then you have to make a judgment from all that, discovery, I would assume. So I'm kind of drawing on you being a data junkie and seeing these trends. And from your view, let's talk about, what are some major shifts you're seeing in the home buyer behavior? What is the data telling you that, that we can look at?
It's an interesting time. We're here in, it's March, end of March, 2025. For people listening to this in several years in the future, Aaron, which I'm sure they will be doing.
We're going to put this in a time capsule. So,
that's right.
21, 25. This one's for you.
We'll look back on it. But right now, we're at a moment in the year where, the housing market seems to be softer than people anticipated or hoped for. Rates still remain high. There are tariffs being put in motion. All the home builders I talk to are saying things are okay. They are fine. They are behind where we thought they would be. Midterm, long term, we're hoping for improvement. So maybe a little softer. What that means in marketing, I think, is like efficiency. How do I do more with less right now? Okay, to answer your question, what does that mean for home buyers? Well, the way we see it in our data is two ways. When things in the macro environment are a little bit slower or less certain economically, we see two things happen. One, we actually just see fewer people forecasted to actually move in total. Couple interesting stats from our database of consumers, which is called NexGen, which is the when are they moving engine that we built. It's kind of our proprietary technology. We noticed last December that the forecast of movers this year was going to be below 2024. So in 2024, 21.5 million people moved primary residences.
Is it?
2024, it's 21.5. That's total. It's renters, buyers, sellers. It's everybody who changed primary residences who are adults. In December, we looked at NexGen and we saw that this year was going to be about 20 million. That's 1.5 million fewer people moving this year than moved last year. Now, that's a seasonally adjusted number. What that means is it's now March, and we have seen an uptick in that number. So we are forecasting that 20.7 million people are forecasted to move this year on a seasonally adjusted run rate. That means more people are kind of coming into market and are potentially looking to buy something. So that's good, but it's still fewer people than last year. And then two, which is interesting, is how long those people are actually looking at a primary home that we see. It's a much longer time. So, we've got data that says on average, a new home construction buyer will be, I guess, in market for that home for about 263 days before close. So that length of time just gets longer as the economy gets less stable. When the economy is frothy and rates are low, that usually shrinks as much as even like 100 days. So as the market softens, the days between first seeing a home and then buying that home just gets longer. 263 days, sometimes more. So I guess bottom line is fewer people moving this year than last year, but, more people seem to be jumping in the market, getting adjusted to the 7% rate and coming in to buy. So that's good. And then two, we see it in their behavior because they're just taking longer to kind of consider and decide where to buy. And they might see something that they like and they realize they can't afford it. There's a lot of that happening too. There's a lot of voyeurism that doesn't convert to an actual, home purchase.
Well, two follow-ups to that. When you say what you're seeing is 263 days, is that based on the data of 2024?
Yeah, that's 2024 data. Yeah.
And from the trend in 2023, you see that as leveling out, that's kind of been the trend post-COVID over the last, say, 2 years. And what's the expectation going into 2025?
That's right. So during COVID, when home builders were just selling out, that sort of full home buyer journey was shorter. It was anywhere from maybe it was more like around 180, 90 to 200 days. Now it's 263 or more, even like 300 days. That means the first time people ever lay eyes on the home that they eventually buy, whether it's on a platform like Zillow, whether it's a sign on the street, whether it's an ad, has just gotten longer, because they're taking their time with it as the economy kind of gets a little bit challenging and rates stay high.
And then to your demographic point, are you seeing those that are entering the market, are you seeing these as being the first-time buyers, the move up, or the downsize? What we've seen as well is there's been more on the active adult, pre-retirees, those that have built up equity. Yes, they not in the biggest rush, but they're one of the leading charges. And then also a pent-up buyer demand for first-time home buyers. And when there is that kind of affordability or that sweet spot, that's when you see quick turnarounds.
Yeah, I think what you're describing is what we describe based on our data as there's really two housing markets. There's the no mortgage cash market, which is like 700,000 and above housing. And those people are selling for cash, buying for cash, typically a little bit older, have the cash on hand to just like move around. And that market moves, that market can move. Now below that price point, you're talking about people who need mortgages are, I think about a third of all home buyers now are first-time home buyers, if I'm not mistaken about that data.
It's still that mark. Yeah.
Yeah. It's still a pretty big chunk. So they're just, they're constrained. And so the people that we see sort of making transactions, and by we see it, it means we're seeing home sales interact and then integrated with CRMs. So we're seeing real-time sales data, and then we match that sales data to like the marketing funnel. Is what we see sort of happening there is that it's really the people with high indices of life events, basically people who have to move, and you just got to move. You're having a first kid or another kid. We had an accident in our house and like our house got damaged. That's for another podcast. But we very suddenly we had like a life event, and we very suddenly, my family, may need to quickly move because of the house situation. So it's like life event people who are just like, I'll pay the rate, I'll figure it out. I need a house. I have another job. I need to go back to the office. So it's two housing markets. There's the cash market, which is a pretty big market, by the way. I think 40% of all homeowners don't even have a mortgage. Mm-hmm. So, those people are buying and selling. That's good. And then below it, and where the home builders come in to really help is that they help to, offset some of those mortgage rates, right? So they underwrite some of that, and that helps that second market kind of get into homes when they're having life events.
Well, are you seeing any other emerging demographic trends beyond kind of that to market? Is there anything regionally?
The migration, some anecdotes. I had a client call us and say, hey, can you look at the platform with me? I'm seeing these migration patterns that I have questions about. So we recently launched a new product called Market Assessment, and it allows customers to log in and then see the migration patterns of people moving in and out of a region.
Okay.
Which is pretty cool. So
yeah, that's really cool.
You start seeing that stuff, and a lot of people's reaction to data is this accurate? Is this
accurate and reliable? Yeah, I mean that's got to be
all the time, and it's totally fair. And what I find happens is within a client organization, 3 people will disbelieve it, but then the person who's in charge of it, usually like the marketer, like, no, it's true. And then the operations people are like, it can't possibly be true. How is this true? And then the marketer was like, no, this is who buys the homes. I'm like, wow. So usually the data is right more than it's wrong. But on this question, I think it was like a reverse migration. It was like people were moving. We found
from Florida up to New England,
Texas to California.
Oh,
it was like wait a minute,
that's not a trend I'm not going to push back on.
And people were like, that's not supposed to be happening. People aren't doing that. And so it was like one of those things.
I know some Texans that will say that's a pretty good trend, but no, sorry.
That's how you can promote their podcast. They're going home, everyone. They're getting out of here. It was. I know you welcome them. It's okay.
There's big enough land and hearts here in Texas for everybody.
There's plenty. Well, it was like one of those patterns. It was like, the people who are buying, are actually, the people who are sort of, who are, I think it was actually a place in California. Like a lot of this is from Texas. And they put a dot on a map and they drew a big circle. And like a lot of these home buyers are from California. So you can actually, we know that.
So it definitely influences the targeting and where you're putting your paid advertisement and where the dollars and which market.
Because then a lot of people think, real estate's local still, and it's somewhat local. But, at a dashboard, you can see like, okay, maybe 20% of it is local. Yeah. Like not 80% of it. A lot of people are coming, they're still moving around the country for life events.
Well, we find it, yeah. Same thing, frictional movement or migration where it's, need to move a job, return to the office. Hey, it's being relocated. They're at their homes 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, skimming, and they're, searching.
Absolutely. And really knowing who's actually moving versus just spying on homes or having fun on Zillow it's hard to know. Zillow gets huge traffic. Realtor does, CoStar does, they all do. But far fewer people actually move than spend time looking at real estate. I know I look at real estate kind of for fun. It's a form of entertainment or distraction, depending on how you look at it. And so who's actually moving is much harder to detect.
Well, to policies, and this is maybe not showing up in the trends or the data, but maybe it is. Interest rates, tariffs, economic policies, how are these affecting buyers and buyer behavior? Are you seeing those trends at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's similar. I mean, obviously, so much is grounded on rates. So much has to, so much is that, but also there's just a sense of just the same consumer confidence indices, affect consumer trends in real estate too. The only thing that's slightly countercyclical is that if things in the economy or the news cycle seem grim or uncertain, a lot of times people see a move as a way to get certainty in their lives. So we do see that as well too. And an example of that, like people used to move for a small handful of reasons. The what I called before life events. People used to move for about 5 life events. It was having a child or a change in family status, health, graduation or out of the house. So kids graduate and you have empty nesters. I think marriage is really the number one reason people actually move. Divorce is another one. And then job or job change. But now you have people moving for very different reasons, including politics, weather, taxes. So those are new reasons why people move. And so as the world seems to be, in a state of uncertainty, to put it mildly, that is affecting people's decisions to move, and the number of life events that we see in our platform basically going up. And then where they want to move changes as a result. They might want to live somewhere politically different than where they live. They might want to move because of weather, and they might want to move because of tax reasons, and they have more freedom than they did, before COVID to do that.
I mean, are there any other, I guess, key indicators or life-changing events, or I guess, interest rates, or I mean, tax, going for a tax rate may not be a life-changing event, but it does seem like a attribute that the consumer is now paying more attention to. I mean, do you see any other ones that, are kind of rising in the ranks, or you would say, hey, that may influence marketing decisions?
No, I think the notable one is, it is the influence of politics on people's decisioning. One thing we actually do see on our platform that our customers also see are the politics of their prospects. So you can actually see the differences between Republicans and Democrats moving or interested in moving.
Really?
I don't know if I should disclose who wants to move more. I don't know if I should do that. Try to be not political, Aaron, but
no, it doesn't have to. I mean,
it's actually something
first of all, it's apolitical all around, but two, that's the beauty of data is it's data. I mean, the narratives are what we fill in the gaps in between, but the data is the data.
Yeah.
So if you can disclose, it would pique my interest, but I can't. I don't.
For the first time on your show, Aaron, we do see far more Republican-leaning consumer traffic coming to builder websites looking to move than we do Democrat. And I don't know why. I don't have the...
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Is you think there's just kind of a shift more?
I think it might be a confidence thing. That's my sort of editorial on it, but I think it's a confidence thing. I think if I think with a Republican-controlled sort of government, you think, hey, the world is going my way, things are okay, we're going to be better off than we were before. And so, I think buying or moving houses is something you do when you think like, hey, it's going to be good. We're going to be better. I'm going to make more money. Things will be cheaper. Let's get into the market. So yeah, we do see that on a lot of our clients and in general patterns. So yeah, I think that's actually a really interesting one. And sometimes, like customers, we're like, golly gee, look at that! Like, wow, these are a lot more Republicans that are looking to move than Democrats.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm gonna look to see and see what kind of trends we see over the years, because that sounds interesting. And then again, how do you cater that to be? I mean, of course, it's always a fine line to
absolutely
cater to that demographic or any demographic, but not dip into political.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to that degree of future thinking, AI. What's your thoughts on it? Is that something audience to? I think it's just a little widget. It's like a chatbot. It's like Flippy, but it talks back to you and it can access the internet.
Okay,
that's my best understanding.
Okay, yeah, no, all right. I haven't heard of that yet, but I will look into it. But what I have heard about AI, here's what I'd say about AI and all this stuff. I guess all that matters is, bringing it back down to, your customer or my customer is, most of our companies are using AI. Most people are using AI for something, even minor. I think what it means for like a marketer selling and marketing new homes in a softer economy than we would have had, or a softer housing. It basically means this stuff, data and technology to do your job, is just easier, and it's more ready than it's ever been. We can go on a long tangents about AI. I think AI in use can get you 90% of the way there. But the last 10% you got to figure out and use your human brain to accomplish. And I think anybody who's ever used AI in large or small applications probably has experienced that.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's good for scaffolding. It's good to get you as a starting point, but don't look at it.
Exactly. It's 90% of the job, and then the 10% you got to fix it. It's like that for everything. But basically what it means is, like, listen, a company like mine or a company like yours can provide so much more data so much more technology that's actually usable by a non-technologist to do their marketing job better. That's what AI does for me. Like someone can just log into a platform or work with your business or a lot of businesses and just get right at their fingertips exactly what they need. Who are my customers? What do they like? When will they buy? What do I do to convert them to customers? And it's literally just like clicks away and it all comes right at you on your desktop for like not that much money. Like something that your company or your budget can support. That to me is what AI is now. We use AI to turn 300 billion daily digital consumer events into just someone that says this person is looking to buy a house like that. AI does like that's
well, and into your business. Do you find that as a groundbreaking or an ability that offers insights that predecessors couldn't even fathom?
Completely. We use AI to take all of the data that we ingest, 300 billion digital events. We've got all the property data in the US. We've got every adult, every household, all the public data about real estate transactions. And AI can say, these are the 1.7 million people looking to buy new homes in the next 6 months. Like, boom, it just spits what you need.
Well, and I know you can't go too far into NexGen, and I know it's proprietary. You can't move the screen back and see the wizard, operate anything. But, I found that interesting, the data, when I was, fooling around playing and got a kind of sneak peek with my teams with Audience Town is how do you determine, what's the metrics to determine that person's kind of likelihood that they're going to move in the next 6 to 12 months? Can you give any insights on what's the algorithm or what's going into that kind of thought process?
Yeah, sure. It's, I like to describe it as easy, but not simple. People, so, excuse me, to know who's moving, you have to have all the data. So we built the NexGen, which is the largest superset of consumer and property data in the country. And then, you unleash sort of AI and machine learning. They're slightly different, but basically to kind of interpret the data, what you would call data science. And then you start to see the patterns. So some of it might start with an assumption like, people who are shopping for, baby apparel and diapers and also are on 20 new home builder websites every month are, more likely to move than someone not exhibiting those behaviors. So they might go into...
And they get like a scoring system.
Correct, like a funnel. And then you take those funnels of all those people and be like, of those people, these people who are renting an apartment and are, shopping for baby apparel and had a financial increase event, those people are even more likely than these people. Boom, and they go down the funnel. This is all done, in high speed.
But it's really focused on that kind of consumer-centric data and really Absolutely. Provides that holistic buying patterns and That's ancillary
right. So it's all focused on consumer, and consumer patterns, consumer behaviors. And then you can say, okay, let's look at the, let's say 10,000 people who bought homes. What were their profiles like that make them the same? And then you can say people who bought homes across the country look like this. And then people who did not buy homes look like this. And so you're like, all people who bought homes have these 20 things in common. Went to a portal, shopped, and then the machines put it all together and be like, these 20 things, all people who bought homes did them. And then you go back out and then you sort of package those things in and say, these are the behaviors, traits, attributes of people who bought homes are. And then you can kind of like reverse engineer, so to speak. And then you can start to predict, because then you can say, everybody in the country who looks like this, who has not bought a home,
will more likely buy a home in a set period of time. Yeah.
They're going to buy a home, like these people. And then you can start to predict very far out, like 12 months out, and to the point where machines and data can actually predict home moving even before the people themselves can. which is not an uncommon thing at all. Most people, the last time I moved, we had a life event happen before this house thing many years ago. We had a health event in the house, and we moved like 8 months after that. Now, during the health event, nobody was sitting around being like, oh my gosh, someone has to have surgery. We should probably move houses. That's not your second thought. It's like your 10th thought. You're like, you know what? This medical event changes how we think about life and where we want to live. And it happens in a very latent way. But the machines can kind of understand these things, pretty quickly to be like, hey, this person seems very interested in real estate all of a sudden. And then you can start to like look at all the patterns and understand it better. So yeah, that's kind of how the machines work. I find it very fascinating. I am not a computer scientist. Our team are, and the stuff they bring me is just incredible and fascinating and interesting. Some of it we turn into products. Some of it we're still sitting on deciding what to do with it. But it's really powerful once you can understand it and then actually do something with it. Like, what do you do with that knowledge once you have it? It's very powerful.
Well, I mean, to that point, is there anything cooking in the back? Anything in the roadmap for 2025 for Audience Town that maybe we should keep an eye out, or how you guys build it on top of the success?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, the stuff that we're really excited to be showcasing is our market assessment product. We did it in partnership with CoreLogic. CoreLogic is the leading real estate data company in the United States. And they partnered with us on a product that matches all the property data to the consumer data so that you can start to understand all about sort of who's buying homes, not just that a home sold, but who was it and what are their profiles and characteristics. And then you can see all those migration patterns, all the buyer profiles. It's like really fascinating when you take consumer data and marry it with property data. So that's one that we launched it at IBS, and we're getting a lot of interest in that. So that's really cool. The next big thing is what we're calling attribution bundle, which allows you to make a home sale and then kind of like trace back the marketing journey that person was on, or that buyer journey, so that you can actually see the person who bought this house, saw the house for the first time on an ad, 8 months ago or something. And you can actually see what actually works and what doesn't. What actually drove the lead? Was it a Google click? Google takes credit for a lot of things. Right? Of course.
I mean, you find it where it's, I saw that, I saw a banner, I saw an ad. Okay, they remember the name, but they didn't engage with it.
That's right.
Then, they're sitting around the coffee table, or they say, oh, remember that one, vineyard. And they type in, first thing they go on to search. Well, Google's going to say, well, that was search did that. Well,
that's right.
Was it your Facebook ad?
They fill out a buyer form, and they're like, how did you learn about us? And they're like, I don't know. Like,
oh, yeah. And then it's always just like,
I don't know.
Search Google or whatever's the first one.
Google, they can get. What happens, what's awesome about the platform, and why marketers like it, especially in more efficient times, is it actually shows that the marketer did a lot more of the work to get that lead and sale than anybody gives credit for. Like, it wasn't just Google. It wasn't the sales team, like just somebody walked in and they sold them. More often than not, it is the website, and it's all of the marketing activity that brings people to that website, which is very hard to trace, understand, especially if it's before a form. But most people will look at a house.
Well, you got so many lines in the water that you just,
And most people will look at a house, and our data we see, they'll look at it for 4 or 5 months, maybe 6 months, before ever filling out a form to see the house. So for 6 months, and this sounds normal when you say it, you go, hey, look at this house. I like this house. Check this. You like this? You're not filling out a form. People do that for months. And it's like astonishing the behavior that you see kind of below the waterline before they fill out a form or call and say, I want to see the house. So that's like fascinating. So people see that stuff with this attribution bundle. They're like, oh my gosh, I thought that Google and this portal and this sign led to the sale, but it's not that, it's like 4 other channels that the marketer was like set up, and that nobody gave the marketer any credit.
There's a series of programming over here.
And you're like, wow, we just spent $20,000 to get these customers that we thought came from the right, but they're actually coming from the left on the things we spent $2,000. And then like, okay, this changes everything.
I mean, it just gets to, we're dealing with, and I've said this before, more and more, I mean, for myself as well, and I know from you, I mean, we do it for fun for real estate, but just in general, the proliferation of information, we are dealing with a much more educated buyer. So it only makes sense that the builder and developer, especially like using softwares like yourself or just analytics or any sort of data metrics, you have to be equal, if not above that education level to meet the buyer where they're at.
That's right.
And their expectations of what
That's
they're
right.
going to, when they come on the landing page or the website, you want to make sure that you're connecting with that buyer and providing them the information that they're looking to consume.
Totally. I mean, yeah, the maxim has been true for a long time now. The consumer is in control. They have perfect information. They do all of the research on their own, just like they do in the automotive industry. That you walk onto a lot, you're like,
Yeah. Guy doesn't walk on a lot to get out of the rain.
Like, 20 years ago, you bought a car and a salesperson would come out, and they'd be very well dressed and they'd really try to sell you, and you didn't know anything. You're like, what's the difference between this and that? Now, you go to buy a car, by the way, these guys come out basically in t-shirts and they're like, all right, which one do you want? And they're like, that one. And they send you on a test drive and then they do the paperwork. That's happening in real estate where it's just like, I want that, and they're in control. And so as a marketer, you can't be in control as much as you used to be able to. You can't control what they believe and feel all the time. The consumer's going to do all their research online. They're going to show up loaded with information from the web. And they're going to say, look, I want to hear more about, this heating system. I want to know more about, the amenities. So as a marketer, you just kind of have to meet them where they are and provide the best experience you can. And, data and analytics can help you just be a better marketer in a world where you don't have as much control.
And I think as a marketer, suggest to all is that you have to be experts both in the heart and the mind when it comes to, what's the hook and what are you attracting that, that gain or that, fantasy of the American, dream of home buying plus, okay, well, how much is it going to cost? What's the interest rates? What's the builder incentives? Does it fit the tax bracket or tax rate that I'm looking for? And I think, from a sales perspective, you have to be multifaceted.
Yeah, that's right. On all those things now, you have to know the market. You have to know what consumers are thinking, and you have to tailor your marketing to it, and you have to do it, on a budget. Never easy, but I do think data and technology to do these jobs is easier and more affordable than ever, which is good. This stuff isn't complicated anymore. Things are changing like Google search, because of AI, but I think people can, I think the tools available now through data and technology and AI are just, they're easy. Anybody can do it. Which is good.
Well, as we're kind of wrapping up today's program, I always like to ask the question because, I know we were talking before, especially our unique backgrounds and what brought us to the industry. But what advice would you give a young professional or those that are wanting to get into the real estate industry?
Well, no, it's a good question. And I'd probably reframe it slightly to say, I'd encourage more young people to get into real estate, because real estate is just an important industry. It is an essential service. It decides the sort of happiness of a lot of people's lives. I just think it's an industry that is important. We need more housing in this country. There's not enough of it. There's not enough affordable housing. Houses can be made more efficient. Policy needs to be better. A lot of things need to be improved about housing to provide the American dream to people, which people feel like, is slipping away. So I say all that to say, I'd like more people to get into housing. And I don't just mean people to build and sell homes, but people in technology and data, people who are interested in innovation should come into this industry. And at the risk of sounding a little, sort of belittling, I don't mean it that way, but to say is, they're behind on some things. And so you can have a huge impact on housing, by getting into this industry. And the industry is so aware of its need to modernize and innovate that it's a really fun place to innovate and work. It's not the old real estate industry from 10 or 20 years ago at all. There's more of a focus on operational excellence. There's a focus on business performance. There's a focus on technology, data, consumer intelligence. So it's like a really fun time. A lot of other industries are just more mature on this stuff, and so they're not as fun to work in professionally. Yeah. That's kind of just my personal. I used to work in ad tech and martech, big brands and media, and it's very mature now. And now they just like bicker about like tactics and features, and it's like kind of commoditized and not as fun. This is like blue ocean, wide open, and it's an important industry. Everybody in the industry is really nice, and there's like just a desire for more knowledge and more technology, more data, more good ideas. So I just think it's a great industry. I'm so glad I got into it, 7 years ago when I did, and it's an industry I plan to stay in for the rest of my career. So I hope more people get into it and think of it as a place to have a great career.
Ed, I love it. I appreciate it. And I hope to have you back on to look at the trends. And I mean, the insights that you guys are providing are amazing. So thank you for sharing.
Let's do it, Aaron. I think, it'd be fun now with some of these new products. Maybe we can pull a bunch of cool migration data and look at it together and say, what does this mean?
Yeah. I would love to do a little brainstorming and just see out there and say, hey, let's do discovery, ask questions, and make some judgment calls.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
This has been
Who
great.
knows?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, Aaron, thanks for having me on the show.
Well, thank you. And for those that are listening and watching, thank you. Have a great day.